So, so Brad's a friend of mine. We work together, and I've heard his story before on like a recorded audio, but I've never seen him tell it in person. And I was so intrigued, and I related so much that I was like, I got to get this guy up here to share his story. And and then I get to work with him every day, and I see how he interacts with the guys. I see him out here sponsoring other guys. I see him living happy, joyous, and free. And I'm like, that's what recovery looks like. That's the example that people need to see. So, I also just want to say, anytime I share my story or go to a speaker meeting, I always tell people I encourage people not to compare, because I've sat in these meetings before and compared my situation to another person's story, and then it was easy for me to be like, well, I've never done that, and I've never done that, and I'm not going to do that until I found myself doing those things. And so, as Brad shares a story tonight, I just challenge all of you to look for the similarities, not the differences, because we're all like in this moment and in this room tonight for this 1 hour. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brad. Let's go, Brad.
Whew, hey y'all, I'm Brad. I'm an alcoholic.
Brad.
Tonight I want to speak to your heart. I want to speak to your spirit. That's one thing I ask God now, is to guide me, to come into my heart and guide me. And I'm going to tell you what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. It's been a hell of a journey to get to where I'm at right here. It's been hard. It's been real hard. My sobriety date is April 22nd, 2024. So I'm at about, thank you, Jared. Yeah, and so I'm at about 13 months, I think. And I could not see that ever happening. I couldn't last 13 days, 13 hours, 13 minutes at the end of it all. So I was born in 83. I'm a Grady baby, my mom came to it. I'm a Grady baby, yeah, ATL. But my mama was from Korea. She was an immigrant. She came from Seoul, Korea, and she moved to College Park, of all places. And, it wasn't like it is now when she moved there. Shit happened like it does in every city, gentrification and all this and that. And for a long time, I blamed my demographics for why I acted the way I acted. I blamed my daddy not being around for me being a little shithead, so my daddy was a white man. He was from Cabbagetown, so I'm biracial. I used to blame that for why I acted and felt the way I did, and I never knew it until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, that I had that God-sized hole in me. I had something wrong with my spirit. My spirit was sick, and I thought things out here could fix what was wrong in here. And I threw these things in this void, and it was like a bottomless pit, and this hole just kept getting bigger and bigger, because the external things cannot fix what was internally wrong with me. And I never knew what was internally wrong with me. Turns out I'm restless, irritable, and discontented unless I get the next thing, because I'm never satisfied with the thing I got right now. Never satisfied with the thing I got right now. Once you take the alcohol out of alcoholism, I'm left with the ism, and somebody said it's I, self, and me. My internal spiritual malady. I never heard of that shit before. What the fuck is that? So I experimented with weed a little bit, because, I wanted to be cool. I looked up to the cool kids, the thugs and shit like that, and I was like the little Asian kid, and they're like, here, hit this. This will make you cool. And I'm like, okay, that's all I ever wanted, And so I smoked a little weed, and it felt weird, I was like, but I wasn't thinking about me anymore. And that was around 6th or 7th grade. Experimented with weed, and then I fucked around and had sex real early, because I'm not gonna blame my parents for that, but that was busy, And when I discovered that was another thing that changed how I felt. You know, I learned how to be a womanizer, you know, at a very young age. And about ninth grade, I figured alcohol could help me with my premature ejaculation. So I started drinking alcohol. Next thing you know, I'm fucking skipping class, failing classes, smoking weed, having sex, drinking, and I failed ninth grade. You know, and let me see, in 11 years of school, I went to 9 different schools. My mom moved me around a lot. She was trying to put me in places that were more racially diverse, you know, and she was trying to get me right, but she couldn't, you know, it's hard for a woman to raise a man, you know, and my daddy wasn't around. He was a partier. I never knew what that meant either until I got older. You know, I thought he just like threw on like a party hat and had a kazoo and was like partying. Well, not kazoo. Y'all saw that movie? I didn't know that's what the partying was. I thought it was like, boo, you know. But anyway, so she's like, your daddy's partying. I'm like, you know, all this time, when my dad wasn't coming around, I never knew it at the time, but it made me feel like I wasn't enough. You know, I didn't know that at the time. You know, neglect makes you feel like you're not enough. Or when the person is around you and they're using all the time and you can tell that they're on something, it makes you feel like you're not enough. You have to be this way to be around me. And so I didn't know that at the time, so I continued my behavior. I failed ninth grade twice, actually. And then I ended up dropping out of school. And I continued this process of smoking, drinking till I black out, and having sex, like being promiscuous for some years. At about 19, I discovered that I could drink more if I snorted some cocaine. You know, I tried a bump of cocaine. This guy left me with another guy he knew, and at this time we were listening to like 666 Mafia and fucking Kingpin, Skinny Pimp, and Player Fly. And they was making cocaine sound okay. Like, you know, because at first it was like, nah, you know, you snort that shit, you're a fucking junkie. But then we listen to these rappers and shit, and they make it sound cool. So, you know, my buddy, he knew that I had this outgoing personality, and he left me around one of his buddies that snorted. And he said, don't you do no shit right now while I leave you here. He had to go check on his car or something, and he left me with his snorting buddy. And we were sitting there. I didn't know this guy from a can of paint. I'm like, hey, Doc. His name was Doc. Imagine that. Hey, Doc. I said, hey, Doc, what's that stuff do to you? He said, you want to try it? He said, it's hard to explain. It makes you feel good. You want to try it? I said, fuck it. You know, let me get a bump. And I think on this time, I was on like my 5th Old English for the day. Old English 800 is malt liquor. And about five or six, I would be punched, you know, I'd be slizzard, and 6, I would be drunk. So I was on like my 5th one, and I took me a bump. And I was like, holy shit. The drunk, like the slurs and the dizziness went away, but my silver tongue was still there. I could still talk that shit, and I still felt good. And I drank a whole nother 6-pack. And I was like, whoa, you know, this shit is amazing. I could drink like a fish and not be drunk as long as I got powder, some cocaine. So that shit carried on for about 10 years. Probably about 10 years, 19 to 29. Oh yeah, there was some ecstasy mixed in there somewhere. I don't remember much of my 20s, you know. I do remember, however, key points. Like, all right, so you know you wake up from a drunk night, and you're blacked out, and you say, damn, how did my shoe get over here? How did my shirt get over there? And how did I end up over there? And you try to like CSI, like what last night was like. Last thing I remember was, that's how like the last 25 years of my life was. You know, from this point on, I'm 41 years old right now. And for the last 25 years, I remember key points in my 20s, like my mother passing away. My mother passed away in 2008. I believe I was 26 years old. And by this time, she had been sick for a while. She was diabetic. So she had 5 amputations. My mother was an immigrant from South Korea, and I loved my mama to life. You know, I don't want to say I loved her to death. I loved her to life, but you can't love someone 100% if you're not at 100%. You know, I would go sit by her when she was in her diabetic coma at the hospital because her blood sugar dropped to 11, and I would sleep by her side. But I was also on the run from a warrant. I was also scared to be at home, you know, and that's, looking back, man, I used to say, man, I love my mom. I love my mom. And I used to tell her, I love you, Mom. She said, no, you don't. She said, if you did, you would show me. If you loved me, you wouldn't stay out all night. If you loved me, you wouldn't bring these random girls to the house. If you loved me, you would call me and let me know you're alive, because I'm worried about you, son. You know, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what kind of people you're hanging around. But if you loved me, you would show me. I love you, Mom. You know, and I remember she went through 5 amputations. I don't know if y'all ever met anyone who's diabetic, but it starts there. They cut her there, they cut her there, they cut her there, and then they cut her there. And then she was on a diaper. I would change her diapers. I would do her dialysis. I would take her blood sugar. I would feed her. And then I got to go drink, because I deserve it. Because it's all about me. You know, it's always all about me. The Friday, June 27th, my brother had went out of town. Of course, I was living with my brother, you know. I was always living with somebody. You know, I was always leeching off somebody. I was always finding a way to get in to where I could drink comfortably somewhere, you know, or I could use comfortably somewhere. But I was living with my brother. They had went out of town. My brother went out of town. My sister had went out of town. And my other brother, who had just gotten out of prison, he's institutionalized. He was on a lot of psych meds. He was there, but it's pretty much me watching Mom this day. And I fed her, and she threw up. I went and heated her up something else, and she threw up. And I had a buddy in the back guest house. My brother had a nice-ass house, and he was back there waiting on me to come shoot pool with him. And I said to my mom, I said, Mom, I'm not going to keep feeding you if you're going to keep throwing up. She died that day, and that was the last thing I said to my mother. I'm not going to keep feeding you if you're going to keep throwing up. What a fucking piece of shit that was. I mean, I used that to keep drinking, to keep getting high, because I didn't want to think about how much of a piece of shit I was that day. Again, it's always all about me. You know, being the womanizer I am, I had sex with a girl, I invited a girl to the funeral, because it's always all about me. And, man, to live with myself, I had to do something. You know, it was my dad's fault. It was my dad's fault, because he liked to party so much. Because he was asking her for money while she didn't have any legs. So now he's a piece of shit. You know, now it's his fault. And I held on to that resentment towards my daddy till 2019. Pretty much a week before he passed in 2019. He was one of us. And I used to see this book right here laying around. My daddy he had a book, a blue book laying around. I used to say, what is that? Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, like, what are you, an alcoholic or something, you know? And he said, I'm sick, son. I said, you're not fucking sick. You do that shit because you like doing it. You like methadone because you like doing it. And you like crack and heroin or meth or whatever the fuck you're doing because you like doing it. You're not sick. The whole time I was on cocaine, beer, liquor, weed, pills, probably did a little meth here and there, you know, at that time. But I wasn't doing what he was doing. So, you know, I was so judgmental. I was so critical of him. And by this time I was an abuser. I was abusing the girl I was with, who we were holed up in a hotel on Candler Road. And I remember I was everything that I said I wouldn't be. And that includes, man, I've done some stuff, okay? I don't know about y'all, but I get real high, you know, like really, really, really high, and I wake up next to people, and I'm like, what the fuck happened last night? And that's happened a lot, you know. It was about the last 5 years, crack came into the picture, and I graduated the crack, as they say, you know, and I did it for about a year, kind of, before it had its hooks in me. I did it on and off. I did it on the weekends, and, you know, I'm not a crackhead. I just smoked a little crack on the weekends. Then I was a crackhead after about a year. And so that was probably the worst I had ever been. Like, I've been powerless and I've been drunk. Like, I remember being on weed and thinking that it connected me to God. I would listen to Bob Marley and I look at the trees and I was like, yeah, man. Yeah, man. And I'd be like, yeah, man. I was just like thinking I'm a fucking Rasta or some shit. And I'm just connected to Mother Earth because I'm smoking her plants. And, I found out that completely disconnected me from God because my idea of God has changed, by the way. Now God is the consciousness of everything. They do studies now where plants have consciousness. Plants communicate with each other. But anyway, I didn't know that at the time. So like with liquor, weed, cocaine, and I did do meth, can I get all right, I'm gonna say it. All right, fuck it. So I woke up next to this dude one time, right? And there was this old Randy. God bless his soul now. But Randy, I met him on a chat line because when you're high up all night, like the world is pretty much asleep. So I would call shit like Quest Personals and Red Hot Dateline and I pop up over Strawberry's house one day. Strawberry. And I'm like, I drive all the way to fucking McDonough. And I'm living in Decatur at the time. So I done drove like 3 a.m. to McDonough. And this elderly, overweight guy who's not even dressed like a woman. He's like, answers the door. And he's like, I said, is Strawberry here? And then he does the voice. I'm Strawberry. And I was like, oh no. I was like, well, you got any crack? And he's like, no, he's like, I got this other stuff and this meth. So, you know what happens. Yeah. Can I get vulgar, explicit? All right, no.
We don't need to.
All right, well,
We can read the room.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I can suck dick better than a woman. And I'm like, you're scraping my shit with your 1 tooth, Randy. Take me to work. I end up living with this guy for a little while. I could not talk about this stuff before, man. But when I tell you, AA has made me to where, and that was just one night, or one however many months period that was. But there was a lot of nights like that, and with a lot of different quote unquote Randys. Most of them dressed like women, though, at least. But I remember hearing a guy talk about this when I first got my DUI, and they sent me to a DUI class, and I heard this guy talking about stuff like this. And he was talking about it in front of people, and I was like, how can you talk about shit like that, especially in front of girls? I was living a double life. I was slick bisexual, you know what I mean? And ashamed of what I was doing, in the dark. Come to find out later, there are 4 things that men leave off for the 5th step. When it comes to the 5th step. Matter of fact, let me tell you what happened first before I get to that part. I think it's in, is it More About Alcoholism, where it says, we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were an alcoholic. We learned, when we go back out, and I went back out a lot. I've just started this journey of recovery about 5 years ago, and I guess this is leading into what happened. What happened is I looked up, and my dad was dead, my mother was dead, I had a child, I was an absentee father, I had ruined every relationship that I was in, I was homeless, every relationship that I began to develop was strictly transactional. What could you do for me? What do you have for me? Hey, how are you doing, man? Everything all right? Man, I just want to call in and check on you. Hey, can you send me $20? Every relationship was beneficial to me or it wasn't worth my time. Until everybody fucking cut me off. And and I reached out to someone, and they introduced me to detox. And I remember my first run. So I went to Cobb Behavioral Services, and I went to Cobb Behavioral Services, and I went to go get a detox because I heard detox makes you better, you know. And I went for a 3-day detox at Cobb Behavioral Health Services, sitting on this fucking couch for 12 hours. And just this shit coming out of me, and I sat there for 3 days, and they're like, "Where you going after here?" I'm like, "What do you mean? I'm going back home." Or going back to the dope man's house who I was living at the time, you know, in his basement somewhere. Yeah, and it was either Decatur or College Park, one of them. But, yeah. Actually, yeah, I did go back to Strawberry after I got out of Musk Ministries one time. Yeah. But this time, after I left Cobb Behavioral Services, I went to a 3-day detox, and I asked the Uber driver to stop by a liquor store, leaving the detox. I didn't know nothing about AA at this time. I didn't know nothing about powerlessness. Yeah. So I got drunk leaving detox and carried on. It got a little bit worse. It's a progressive illness, so I drank a little more. You know, over the years, my liquor went from like Hennessy and Quavo Gold and Tanqueray and fucking Absolute or Tito's down to Taco Vodka, baby. It's Taco Vodka, $3.79 a pint. You know, like shit, $5.79 for a liter. It all does the same shit. You know, I think somewhere in the book it talks about all the yets hadn't happened to me yet. And it also, in one of the stories in the back, it says something about, you know, a non-alcoholic will change his life. No, will change his drinking to meet his goals and expectations. An alcoholic will change his goals and expectations to meet his drinking. So everything that I thought that I was morally against, you know, I freaking compromised. You know, it all does the same shit. It's just a dick. You know, it's crack is the same as cocaine. You know, I was fucking rationalizing for my disease. I was compromising everything that I ever thought I was, everything that I ever wanted to be, to make my disease thrive. And I didn't know it at the time. After the Cobb Behavioral Services went on a couple months, I ended up going to the extension. I went to the extension. Mr. Jordan, what are you willing to do for victory over alcohol? Anything, sir. Anything. I got kicked out in 3 months for getting on Facebook. You know, apparently I wasn't willing to go to any lengths. You know, part of going to any lengths is follow the rules of the place that you're at. You know, so, you know, fuck them stupid rules. These people are stupid, kicking me out over fucking Facebook. And then I see my buddies. As I leave there, I have nowhere to go now. Now I go to Musk Ministries. I'm at a homeless shelter. At a homeless shelter, so anyway, I get drunk at the shelter, pass out, wake up in an ambulance, begging for change. I remember walking back to the extension to ask my buddies who are still in recovery for money. And they're like, "No, we're not doing that for you, man." I was like, "Help me out, man." They're like, "That's not helping you." Or whatever, fuck y'all, you know? And it's like, so after Musk Ministries, so Musk Ministries gives you 30 days to get your life back in order. You get your job, you get your documentation. Got a job. I fell in love with a girl at my job, and I get my first paycheck, and then I relapse. And I start missing days at work. So now, at the end of my 30 days in Musk Ministries, right back to square one. Call up Strawberry, you know. Go stay with him for a little while. Till eventually that guilt and shame becomes overwhelming, and then I go live with someone else in College Park. And I let him run me ragged and work me like a slave because I know how to build a house from ground up. I've done construction since I dropped out of school. But I was using my God-given abilities to feed my disease. I could build a shower so immaculate, and I would go home and wash in a sink. You know, or not home. I would go to a fucking bathroom and wash in a sink. You know, I could build a house, but I couldn't stay sober, for the life of me. I was in shelters, I was in hospitals, jails, locked up about 15 times, probably all county. You know, always drug-related, drunk in public, disorderly conduct, failing a urine screen, violation of probation. Consequences were adding up. And so I went to Twin Lakes. I did Twin Lakes twice. Yeah. Yeah, I went to Twin Lakes twice. And, you know, Twin Lakes, the last time I went, they said, we want you to go to Bridges of Hope because you're a chronic relapser. You just left here a month ago and you're back. We want you to go to Bridges of Hope. And I was like, 6 months? Where? In Louisville, Georgia. Fuck that shit. You know, I'm good. I promise, I'm good. I mean, these people were crying to me, please go to Bridges of Hope. You know, please go. And I'm like, fuck y'all. Y'all just want your fucking kickback. You know, like I understood how, you know, this shit, like I knew the ins and outs of the fucking insurance-based recovery places. You know, y'all don't care about me. Y'all just want me to go to Bridges of Hope so y'all can get some money or something. You know, I don't fucking stupid, man. Bridges of Hope is not, they don't, when I seen it, I was like, oh, no, they're not getting kickbacks from Bridges of Hope. Bridges of Hope is in the fucking sticks. Like it was built by the residents, like literally. Like that shit. Anyway, so I left Twin Lakes and I said, fuck Bridges of Hope. I'm not doing that shit. Fuck y'all. I went back to the dope man. You know, by this time, I was moving from one dope man's basement to another dope man's shack. When he starts mistreating me, I move back to the dope man's basement. When he starts talking to me like shit, I move back. And I was going back and working for these guys every day, making $150 a day. I made enough money to make a living, but I was smoking it all up, drinking it all up. It was all, I would spend all my money on dope and steal food. You know, like, shit was crazy. I remember one time I cut his grass, big fucking, looked like an acre of grass, it felt like. And he threw the dope on me. I mean, he threw it, like it was like a piece of crack like that, and he threw it at me on the floor. And I was like, come on, man, you ain't got to do me like that, man. You ain't got to treat me like no fucking dog. He said, give me my fucking dope back. I said, I'm sorry, sir. I'll pick it up. And I sat back there, and when I was firing that shit up, I was sad because I thought about all the people at Twin Lakes. And now, the people cared about me there. And they were nice to me there. They were crying. They were crying for me because they cared about me. And here I am letting this motherfucker talk to me like shit because I want to hit. My son's sitting there waiting on me at home, but I'm too busy. I got shit to do, you know. And so by the time the dope man kicked me out, because I poked my chest out and said, I'm not taking this anymore. Get the fuck out my house. I said, you ain't going to kick me out tonight, are you? He kicked me out. Kicked me out, and everything I owned was in a trash bag. And so, like, I had a breaking point. That night behind Family Dollar, you know, I used my trash bag for a cushion. I get stuck in what it was like for a long time. So what happened was I broke. Something in me broke. There was a crack in the walls I had built up, and spirit started seeping in. Willingness seeped in. Willingness to where I'll go to the fucking Bridges of Hope. I ain't got nowhere else to go. I don't want to live out here no more. It's hard out here. It's hard out here for a pimp. Or more like a shrimp. But it's hard out here for a shrimp. Nobody's fucking with me no more, you know? I brought some show and tell. This is me crawling out of a sewer drain right here. This is me crawling out of a sewer drain. This is one of the days I had went to work. And the voices were following me. You know, the voices were screaming at me, I'm gonna kill you, you bitch ass motherfucker, and all this and that. They were taunting me like constantly. And my idea was, if I go in this sewer drain, I'm gonna pop back out on the other side, the sewer grate. And by the time they start shooting with their machine guns through the sewer, I'm gonna hop out the sewer grate and I'll get a head start run. Like this is the terror that I created in my head. Somebody's coming to kill me for what? I don't know. Maybe they thought I was snitching. Every time I went to rehab and told people, you know, I created this fucking horror movie in my head. What it was, I knew I wasn't living the way I was supposed to be living. And that shit was eating at me, and it was eating at me, and it was eating at me to the point where I was hearing fucking voices. I called the police on myself that day to come get me. Please come get me, man. He said, what you want us to do? I said, take me to the fucking hospital. I don't know. So when I crawled in that sewer, I got stuck. And my life flashed before my eyes. And it was scary. My life flashed before my eyes, and I thought about the way I talked to my mama before she died, the way I talked to my dad before she died, the girl I was beating on, my son waiting on me. You know, all the other people that I asked for money because they thought I was their friend, and they loved me, and they cared about me. And that's what my life was. And then the next thought was, you're going to be a fucking pile of bones down here. You know, and they'll never know what happened to you. And that's what you come down to, son. And it was like Twilight Zone music started playing or some shit. Like, and it was like, that was my life in a fucking sewer drain. But that was just one day. That was just one day. Days like that happened all the time in the last 5 years of my hell that I had created for myself. Until I was behind that fucking Family Dollar. Dope man just kicked me out. I'm trying to push one last hit on my crack pipe. And I go to fire it up and it starts raining. I'm like, God damn. All right, God, I'm sorry. I give up. I go to Bridges of Hope. Bridges of Hope was the best thing that ever happened to me. I had been introduced to AA here and there. You know, I remember my dad's book. And I think it's the doctor's opinion when it says, perhaps they were not only mentally and physically ill, but they were spiritually sick. And I thought about my dad. Damn. He was sick. And so am I. So what do you mean? Like, what do you mean I'm sick? How do I get better? And they were like, well, you know, work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and help somebody and, you know, carry the message. And, you know, basically, by this time, powerlessness. I knew I was powerless. And I didn't think my life was unmanageable because I always found a way, you know. Unmanageability. Drugs managed where I went. Drugs managed who I was with, who I hung with, who I didn't hang with, what I ate, if I ate, where I slept, if I slept. Drugs and alcohol controlled me. Drugs and alcohol were my higher power. I never thought about that. Come to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Well, how do I come to believe that? You know, like, you know, Christians are judgmental people and you know, Muslims are bombing people and, you know, fucking just, it's fucked up train of thinking, looking for differences. Perhaps let's see where the religious people are right. Love thy neighbor. You know, treat each other as you want to be treated. Maybe if I start looking for the good will come. You know what made me come to believe? There were several things that made me come to believe, but the most unusual suspect was a fucking ant. Ant. I was sitting out there working one day because we got to work at Bridges of Hope. Make you get up at 5:45 and fucking go to work on the property for free. You know, how ungrateful of me, you know, because it wasn't until later that I had gratitude and wanted to take care of the place that I lived. But I remember sitting down one day at work when I was supposed to be working, and I saw this line of ants. And then an ant would go in the hole, he'd pick up one little piece of dirt, and he'll take it over there. And then they just had this little assembly line going, and I got to thinking, I was like, how the fuck do they know what to do? They don't have a brain like me. They're not smart, these stupid little ants. Well, they can't be too stupid. I bet you they don't worry about stupid shit. Look at them, just moving in a line. And then I remember one day I set a dead mouse outside, and I was like, I wonder if they'll know what to do with this. And then, so like an hour passes, a couple ants go in his ear. Another hour passes, they're coming out his nose. A few more hours pass, and they got an assembly line going. And the next day, the mouse is gone. And I'm like, how the fuck did they know that shit? How did they know what to do? Like, to take him back to the earth and break him down? And I was like, okay, maybe I need to follow the signal. They're receiving a signal that maybe I need to receive. Maybe I don't know everything. Maybe I don't fucking know shit, you know? Joe Rogan, I think, says, he says, I'm smart enough to know I'm stupid now. I used to be so stupid I thought I was smart. You know, and I was like, holy shit, okay. But let me be teachable, to set aside prayer. Me and my sponsor sit down. I find me a sponsor. Started doing set aside prayer. And the third step, come to believe that made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. I didn't know what God was. I didn't have an understanding of God. My GOD went from gift of desperation, GOD, to a group of drunks, gift of GOD, good orderly direction, GOD. I just started following the rules. I started doing what they told me to do, be where I'm supposed to be on time, and just doing what I was supposed to do. Things started alleviating, I started feeling better a little bit. And then we get into the fourth step. Fourth step, at the extension. So this is another thing. Hang on to anything that fucking works. If anything makes you feel good, if anything makes you believe in recovery or believe that you can get better. A lady at Twin Lakes told me half of winning is believing that you can. So if I start, speaker meetings gave me a lot of hope. Made me believe that maybe I could do it too, because that guy was just like me. Okay, this other guy was just like me, but he's not right now. So what happened? Maybe I believe, maybe it could work for me too. If he was as fucked up as I am, or if he's more fucked up than I am, of course it'll work for me. That's all I needed, was a little glimmer of hope. But I remember in the extension, one of the counselors said there are 4 things that guys hold on to when doing a fourth step that inevitably cause relapse. And that's same-sex relations if you're heterosexual. That's molestation, rape, and murder. Well, going to the Bridges of Hope, there's a couple more. There's pedophilia, bestiality, incest. There are things that we do that we will take to the grave with us, not realizing that that's what's taking us to the grave. Hanging on to it. We're human. We do fucked up shit. We make bad choices, especially when our mind is altered. When my mind and my behavior is altered, I do things that I normally wouldn't do. Or when my integrity or my morals is compromised, I negotiate and I make things okay that normally wouldn't seem okay for me. I become the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So I talked about all those things. I talked about them with my fifth step. Sat there for hours. And then he makes all these defects. He marks out all these defects on his defect sheet. I can't remove my defects. I can work on, and it had assets on there too. So I can work on these assets and hopefully it'll counteract these defects. If I'm selfish, be selfless. Give away your last cigarette, not thinking, yeah, you just give me back when you get some. Give it away saying, God's got me. Maybe He'll have me the peace of not having any cigarettes. Because that guy doesn't have any fucking money. He doesn't have any family. He doesn't have a job. Maybe stop thinking about my fucking self for once. Let's try to be selfless, Bradley. You really like this shirt I got? Nah, I can't give you this shirt. Somebody gave it to me. Selfless, Bradley. You can have this shirt. Because I know you ain't got no clothes. I got a closet full of shirts, but I like this one. Fucking selfish and self-centered. My mama asked me one day before she passed, why do you drink so much? Why do you do this? Why do you do this? Why do you live this way? I don't know, Mom. I started crying and shit. It's because my dad likes to party. It's because I'm selfish and self-centered. I step on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate, seemingly without provocation. But invariably, I find that at some point in the past, I made decisions based on self, which has caused me to be hurt. That's what it told me. Everybody who's ever done me wrong, I put myself in those precarious situations. And I never took accountability. It was always everybody else's fault. So I sat for the power hour after the fifth step. I looked at the defects list, and they all blanket up under selfishness, self-centeredness, jealousy, envy, fear, anger, resentment. But there were a lot of other ones in there. Controlling, possessive behaviors, manipulation, conniving. It was like, man, I was all these things, and God, just take each and every one of them. In the 7-step prayer, God, I offer myself to thee. It says, my creator, I'm now willing that you shall have all of me, good and bad. Pray that you now remove every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Thy will, not mine, be done. Amen. And then give it away and then start making these amends. Now, I relapsed after the Bridges of Hope. I did the 12 steps of Bridges of Hope. but I didn't sponsor anyone. I was an AA thief. You know, I started feeling better. It's time to leave this bitch. You know, it's time to go make some money and get on with my life. Fuck the Bridges of Hope. You know, that fucking Nazi. You know, it's like that shit. I mean, the rules were crazy. Tuck your shirt in when you walk in the building. Don't slam the door. I mean, if you can hear the door latch hit, you're slamming the door and you got to write 25 I'm responsibles. I'm responsible when anyone anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA to always be there. And for that, I'm responsible. You got to write 25 of it. It takes about 20 minutes. That's just for slamming the door. You get caught with a non-spiritual reading, like a book about Slash the guitarist. You know, you're fucking doing a Bill story. 16 pages. I was like, man, this shit is crazy. But so I leave the Bridges of Hope and I live in Louisville at Sober Living, working for a Mennonite man. And that shit was boring as hell. You know, I mean, this guy I didn't like my roommates at the Sober Living. These guys are fucking lame. They talk about me behind my back. I know they don't like me. My boss, he's just like, everything was wrong. Everything was wrong. So I was unhappy. I was restless, irritable, and discontented. Went back out. I said, I'm gonna go to Atlanta for 4 days. I went up here with $1,400. I came up to Atlanta for 4 days. On Friday, I was feeling myself. All right. On Monday, I done sucked 2 dicks, ate 2 booty holes, ate a prostitute pussy, fucking smoked all my money up in crack. Was about to sell my car, about to sell my body, about to sell my blood to go get some more fucking dope. Sold my food stamps. I popped up on my son's mother's house on Sunday night. I was broke. I hadn't showered. Smelled like piss. Bottom of my fingernails were black for digging around my car for crack. I said, can I just sleep on your floor? She said, you better take your ass back to fucking rehab. So I went in this time with a new spiritual bankruptcy. I still had a car this time. I still had clothes. But I was lower than I had ever felt. And I threw my hands up like this, and I did what they told me to do. I became transparent, like nothing ever happened. I mean, like I had never been, not like nothing ever happened. But I became transparent. I started sharing like how low I felt. I was fucking powerlessness. I was powerless. I had no reason other than I had a pocket full of money. You know, I was unhappy. I remember helping somebody at the Bridges of Hope my second go round, and I didn't want to be there because I was just here. I just did 6 months. Why the fuck am I back here? And this guy was looking at his schedule in his book, and he was trying to figure it out. I said, well, you got to be there 10 minutes early. Yeah, you got to be there 10 minutes early, too. You got to be in your seat when they get in the room. Yeah. And then I looked over here to the other guy, and I said, yeah, that's the 10-minute read. We're supposed to crack open our book. And then I looked. I said, holy shit. I wasn't thinking about myself for a second. Just helping them do that. And I started doing more of that. What can I do for you, God? Please make me the man that you want me to be, not the man that I thought I wanted to be. Make me be what you would have me to be. Let me be the best possible version of myself. And the best possible version of myself doesn't even think what's in it for me. My life is not about me anymore. That's what I came to believe this time. My life is not about me. When that sunk in, my life got better. My life, when I share, it's not about me. It's about to help the next alcoholic. It's about to help the newcomer to know that, hey, you can do it too. We can do this. We can do it together. It's a we program, not a me program. I think it was Malcolm X that says, replace the I with a W and even illness becomes wellness. You know, replace the I with we and even illness becomes wellness. We can do what I alone can't. God can do for me what I cannot do for myself. And I started giving it to God like daily. And I started diving into step work. I started diving into, man, I remember telling a guy my story about what all I had been through and how now, fuck it, man, I'm going to do what they say and I'm going to do a little more than what's required of me. If I got to clean up this, if I'm on house crew and everybody runs to the dining hall, I'm going to run in there to clean up the shit out the toilet with the chief because I appreciate having a good toilet. And even though it's not my shit, you know, let me stop thinking about me for a second. Let me just do something to help and benefit someone else. Because I remember when I came into the Bridges of Hope, how nice it was to shit on a clean toilet. I was doing it in a bucket, out in the woods. So let me make this toilet clean for the next man. Let me pick up these cigarette butts off the ground. Let me fucking not walk over the trash and complain about how messy it is. Let me clean up some shit that I didn't do. God starts coming in a little bit more. Willingness starts coming in a little bit more. I start becoming more open. I start talking about the shit that I was ashamed to talk about, the shit that we do when we out there, because my life depends on it now. Now I fucking learned that I had to fully concede. Concede means believe in something without wanting to believe it. I want to believe I'm 5'7", but when I stand next to someone who's 5'7", I gotta concede that I'm 5'6", maybe 5'5.5". But I don't want to believe I'm an alcoholic. I don't want to believe I can't do that shit no more. I can't hang with the best of them. God, help me to set aside everything I think I know about myself, everything I think I know about other people, everything I think I know about my own recovery, and especially everything I think I know about you, God, so that I can have a new experience with all these things and help me to see the truth. The truth is that once you turn a cucumber into a pickle, it will never be a cucumber again. And my friends, I am a pickle. But I did it this time. I sponsored a lot of guys. And there wasn't a time limit. It wasn't going to be after I get this X amount of time or this, then I'll be okay. I'm only going to be as okay as I am right now. So I better fucking get okay. I better start writing gratitude lists. I better start finding things to be grateful for. Because you know what? Some days I don't feel so grateful. Some days I feel a little selfish. What about me? Poor old little me. But you know what? My life has transformed tremendously. That son who I had neglected, he texts me, he calls me now. I've shown up to his band performances. I went and got my dad's ashes out of Randy's closet, before Randy passed away. It was weird, too, because I remember, it's just all kind of things just come back together. The job that fell in front of me in my path, do the next right thing and the next right thing will reveal itself. Do the next right thing and the next right thing shows up. I took the job that they offered me because I committed to stay however long they wanted me to stay at the Bridges of Hope the second time. I said, I'll stay until you say I'm ready, Roscoe. He said, will you stay for a year? No, first he said, will you stay 8 months? I'll stay 8 months. Will you stay 9 months? Yeah, I'll stay 9 months. Will you stay a year? I'll stay a year. 9 months came and the job presented itself. He said, will you take it? I was like, yeah, but I committed to a year. He said, I just wanted to see if you'd be willing. And the fact that you were willing shows me that you're ready. The job is 8 minutes away from where my mother is buried at. I got my dad on my nightstand. My mother, I go visit her frequently, and it's a quiet place in the middle of Cobb. Cemeteries are very quiet, and I go sit out there and I meditate sometimes. My son calls me. Whenever his mom needs something, I'm able to send it. I show up for people now. People call me on a daily basis to check on me. I know what they like, what they don't like, what their dreams are, and I care. I care. And that's the hugest thing. I care because there was a long time where I didn't give a fuck about nobody but me. And at the end of it, I didn't give a fuck about even that, So, to have a heart to give my life over every morning. I have a healthy routine now. Before I take a piss in the morning, I roll out my bed and hit my knees. Thank you, God, for waking me up. Please guide my steps, direct my thinking. Let me be the man that you would have me to be. Let me be of maximum service. I will follow you. You open the door for me and I'll walk through it. And I sit and I'll go get my coffee and I'll get my cigarette and I'll meditate and I listen to the birds chirp and I listen to my breath and I breathe in not only oxygen but consciousness. When I quiet the still, when I still the waters of the mind to where I can hear God's voice throughout the day. Now I listen. And it's simple. It's when I walk in a building, I speak to people. When I look at someone, I look at them in their eyes and I speak to them. And I try to make them smile because my life is not all about me. But anyway, thank y'all for letting me share. I hope somebody got something out of that. And just keep trudging on the road to happy destiny. I love all y'all. Thank y'all. Oh, yeah.